Happy Earth Hour, Dominica. Thought I would hear some cheers for that. let's give a let's give an applause for Mother Earth and Dominica. I want to again recognize those persons joining us in social media world, those on the NDFD Zoom connection, those on the NDFD Facebook page, Imo News, and also we have DNO streaming us live as well. So thanks for tuning in. The second panel we have this evening is on sustainable agriculture. We did mention earlier. Now, we have three experts here in the field of sustainable agriculture. But when we talk sustainability, this has become sort of a mainstream word, and we use it interchangeably with terms such as climate change and green, sustainable, and we talk about them like they're all one and the same. But we have three persons here who will give their perspectives from their experiences, from their training, from their knowledge, and from the work that they have done and their interest in Dominica as to what it is that sustainable means. So I will take the opportunity to introduce our panelists for this section. To my immediate right, I have Mr. Andrew Magloire. Now, Mr. Andrew Magloire is the former Chief Fisheries Officer for Dominica, and he did hold that position for, I think, 15 years, Mr. Magloire, and I remember our works in the field together. And Mr. Magloire, in addition to that, is an oceanographer trained in that. I think you hold a Master of Science in Oceanography, as well as fisheries resource management and extensive training in countries such as Japan and other Asian countries. So Mr. Magloire will be specifically speaking about fisheries management and sustainable fisheries to us this evening. Next to Mr. Magloire, we have Mr. Sorry, let me correct myself. Dr. Dave Lloyd. We affectionately call him Dave in the field that we have worked, and he has worked with, I think all of us on the head table there together, we have had experiences together. Now, Dr. Dave, affectionately known as Dave, so we'll go by like the ways we like to call each other. And so he has a PhD in soil science. And when we talk sustainable agriculture or any form of agriculture, we usually think soil. And soil is one of the most important components of agriculture. In addition to having a doctorate in soil science from Cranfield University, he has a Master of Science in soil ecology and soil biology from Lincoln University, as well as a BSc in agronomy from the University of West Indies St. Augustine campus. And Mr. Lloyd, Dr. Dave, has been recently involved in a lot of several projects with regard to land degradation and restoration, particularly in Dominica and the Bahamas. I know from my personal interactions, Dave, we did work at the DBMC together, and you did some extensive work in research and development with Windfresh and Windband, I think, yes, if that was the term. And the research done in that was very instrumental in informing the production of bananas for export to the United Kingdom and for our own local consumption. Dave is also the owner and founder of Eco App Inc., again, putting his passion and his love to the fore there. And I think he will call me up if I didn't say that he himself is a farmer who is very interested in land preservation, and he is implementing a lot of the knowledge that he has in that regard to ensure that the little plots of land that he uses and owns are sustainably cultivated. And then to Dave's right, we have Mr. Kent Coppell. Kent is currently the technical specialist at ICA, ICA for Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture. Kent holds a Master's of Science in Agribusiness and Marketing from the University of the West Indies, and also a Bachelor of Science in Agronomy. So, well-versed persons, and in terms of experience, Kent has worked at Dexia as a market development officer and did some research work with CADI, again, Caribbean Agriculture Research and Development Institute. So I present to you a panel that is well versed in the area of sustainable agriculture. Let me note, I must draw, and maybe Ken maybe even forget that he is currently heading or leading a project in sustainable land management. You look at me like you frightened, my brother. Huh? That for the last 2 years or so in sustainable land management, particularly targeting the development of rural women involved in agribusiness and agro-processing. So that puts you, my friend, in the light to give us your take on when you hear the term sustainable agriculture. What is it that strikes you? There's a mic close to you, and you can hold it for the rest of the night.
Hello. I think they will do a better job in holding this mic, but before I go into responding to your question here, let me just thank the NDFD for inviting me to be part of tonight's discussion. I rather see it as a dialogue rather than a panel. And I think the initiative, I must congratulate the NDFD on this initiative, because that the concept of green solution, green economy, green opportunities, and utilizing the green as part of our moving forward in business is certainly the way to go. And I think the panelists that came on very early clearly laid the foundation for the importance of in the various aspects. Now, coming to the question, we will never be able to cover the area of sustainable agriculture tonight. I think we're going to just do a little bit of dabbing in various areas that are important to Dominica and try to put in the context where persons can understand. But just because you gave me the mic first, it is important that we define what is sustainable agriculture. Like everything else, you want to ensure that the needs of the people for today can be met without compromising the needs of future generations. So in a simple way, is it involvement in an industry, in agriculture in that case, where we can utilize the resources, be able to produce, be able to get some money out of it, but not depleting those natural resources. So that's an important thing that you need to really be clear on. So I will leave it at that for now, and as we get more into the discussion, I shall raise some key components as we speak in terms of the whole issue of sustainable agriculture.
Thank you. And Dave, let's have your take on it as well.
Okay, good night to all, and thanks for having me. I think Kent set the platform. I share his sentiments. With regards to sustainable agriculture, there are several definitions for that term. I like to draw the analogy of a chair. You know, if you have normally you have chairs with 4 legs or so.
Sometimes
so,
3.
Yeah. So yeah, in the context, we'll kind of look at sustainable agriculture in the same vein of sustainable development. So if we look at the 4 legs, I think one of them would be the social dimension. Normally we tend to think of the environmental first, you know, or the social dimension, people, you know. Then the issue of the economics, right, is important. So for agriculture to be sustainable, it must be economically viable. The farmer must, you know, it must make business sense to him and those involved. The environmental is there, as I pointed out. We cannot be sustainable if we have agriculture that's polluting the environment. We had the person from the WASCO, Mr. Laville, spoke about that earlier. And then the whole question of the human factor, although some element of social is in there. But when I speak of social, I mean like the corporate responsibility and all this part of it. On the human side, we have to look at how what we do impacts human health, you know, and so it's multi-dimensional, but in the same vein as Kent mentioned, that we cannot compromise, you know, meeting our needs today. We cannot do that at the expense of the future, you know, generations. And we must consider all these bases. If we just look at the environmental, we have an issue if it's not profitable. That type of agriculture is not profitable. You know, there's a problem there. There's also an element of governance that's required. Sometimes we forget that, but the framework needs to be there to have all these things, you know, working properly and effectively, right? To get going. Yeah,
Okay, thank you, Dave. Now, Andrew Magloire, I want to bring you in because of the fisheries aspect. So I think Kent and Dave touched a little bit on the food part, and you're going to talk about the meat or the fish. So fisheries, and I know you are a strong advocate for ensuring that the fisheries resource is utilized in a responsible manner. But when we talk sustainability and fisheries and agriculture, tell us.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members of the panel here, invited guests, and listening public. I really appreciate you inviting me to be part of this discussion this evening. And fisheries being a component of the whole agricultural sector has special purpose associated with it, and requires really special attention to fully understand how we can achieve sustainable fisheries operations within the framework of the fishery resources contained within the EZ of Dominica. First of all, let me start off by saying that fish, by virtue of what it is a renewable resource. Why I say it's a renewable resource? Because it has the potential to replenish itself through the reproductive process. And so if we're going to achieve sustainable fisheries, we have to pay particular attention to the ability to manage those resources with a view as to allowing them to regenerate themselves adequately to meet the needs of human consumption for which we are using the fish for. So to be a viable renewable resource, fish requires a high dependence on environmental health qualities. The water quality must be pristine so as to allow the fish, which is a live organism, to be able to continue this process of reproduction, growth, feeding, etc. It also needs an ecological system that is dynamic, so that you find if your atmospheric environment is polluted with a lot of carbon, then we tend to produce acid rain. And then acid conditions affects the water and then affects the ability for that fish to reproduce itself, and therefore the sustainability of fish becomes compromised in that respect. So we, having taken this into consideration, then we can begin to talk about how we as the players impacted on the fishery resource can ensure sustainability in light of fish for food, in light of fish for business, okay, as well as in light of fish for future generations to come. So I will talk a little bit here about the business ventures associated with fisheries. We can use fish from three different aspects with respect to business. One, you can just simply go out either in the river or in the ocean and extract fish from the fishing practice. And extract fish from the fishing practice for its use. Or we can engage in the aquaculture process, which means that you actually retrieving fish from the natural environment and containing it into a closed system and allowing it to reproduce, and then you use the reproduced fish as a means of generating food or some other business ventures if it's from some product development that you want to engage in and so forth. And additionally, we can also, when we speak of fish, we also speak in terms of the context of the marine environment. We can engage in things like the culture of the seaweeds and those sort of things. That's another form of agriculture. So sea moss culture is one thing that we can look at as well as a productive output for business within the fishery sector arrangements. So let us talk of the wild capture of fish and to see how we generate business within that context. Dominica, by virtue of what we do, is that we have a series of fishers operating across the island using very small-scale type of operations to engage in the fishing practice. It's not entirely commercial, but it is commercial by virtue of the fact that people are actually obtaining a livelihood from that fishing operation. And so we have to begin to consider what are the factors that are required to ensure sustainability of the fishery resources by virtue of its governance. And the governance aspect requires now for the state to put in place the legislative framework that will govern how we go about the exploitation or the harvesting of the wild resource to ensure its sustainability. Secondly, I think we need organizational structures within the human resource activity arrangements to allow people to understand what are the demands on them to ensure that they themselves understand that this resource can be sustainable and how we use it to ensure that sustainability through our practices. So we can exploit fish through a sustainable manner, or we can exploit fish to the extent where we drive them into extinction. And so these are the things that we have to consider when we exploit fish for business, because the demand for fish is, as a health component, is a very high demand. So it is easy, therefore, for us to go out there and just harvest to the point where we can deplete the resource, and then it becomes non-sustainable.
Thank you. I want you to hold that point, and I'll come back to you on it. So it's a big C, right? It's a big C.
It's a big C.
Right. But I want to come to Dave. And let us take the typical example. Dominica is smaller than the sea because Dominica is in the sea. So let us bear that in mind. That's small Dominica in the big sea. So we have plenty of fish, but we have very little land. So Dave, let us take the typical example. And I believe a few years ago, our average farm size was about 2.5 acres, right? I'm almost certain it's less than that now. Like the commercially established farms are much smaller. But how do we entertain the thought of you want to use that plot of land to produce food, one, for your personal consumption, and two, as an economic activity that will finance your standard of living, feed your family, pay your bills, help you drive a vehicle to get to work, and all of those stuff. So how do you utilize that very small piece of land in a sustainable manner and make sure that, because agriculture involves and economies of scale, which are very important if you have to be profitable. So give me your thought on that.
Yeah, I think that's a very important and interesting question. Mr. Maglow considered fish to be a renewable resource. I consider soil, and many soil scientists, with good reason, to be a non-renewable resource, from the standpoint that it takes more than our lifetime to produce a centimeter of soil, right? So if it's not gonna be, replaced in our lifetime, we consider it non-renewable. Many of us act that that is not a fact. We behave like, our stewardship responsibility means nothing when it comes to use of the land. So your question sort of put the context of a small farmer who is dependent on the land. And traditionally, we have to go back, we have to look back as to what our parents and grandparents did. They acted a lot more responsibly. The Kalinago way of life, the people who the Europeans met here, was one, of it's a sustainable lifestyle. We operate quite differently today with all the fertilizers and pesticides and all that we use. And I think there's a lack of understanding of how the soil works. And there's not an appreciation that the soil is alive. A handful of soil will contain, bacteria and fungi and actinomycetes and so on that will outnumber the people on planet Earth. Okay? Now, you've never heard of a bacteria being extinct. We cannot really, we don't know because it's so vast. We don't know we don't know what we're doing. But it's not, that all is lost, and I believe there's a lot that we can do and learn and improve as to how we manage what God has blessed us with. We have overall pretty, reasonably good soils, but we see with right now it doesn't take much more than a heavy shower to see the turbidity. It's still a few years, but of our water, of the water in our rivers, that it gets brown and chocolatey and so on, and that is lost, and as you said, it's not being replaced. But we can put in measures with regards to curbing erosion, the vetiver strips, and so on, and just our system of cultivation where we use more tree crops and we do a lot more interplanting and so on, that we don't expose the soil that much. Unfortunately, right now, our landscape is dominated by more short-term type of agriculture. The crops, shorter cycle. So your dasheen, your ginger, and so on, yams. And all this type of system, involves manipulation of the soil, making mounds, making beds, making ridges, and so on and so on. And in the context of Dominica, we must come back to the context of Dominica. Heavy rains, right? Our soils are what you find some of the nutrients, particularly your cations, magnesium, and so on. They're easily leached, with the heavy rain. So if you don't have measures in place to protect the soil, keeping it covered, that's very important. Keeping it covered, using our legumes like our beans and so on to cycle nitrogen and add nitrogen to the soil and that sort of thing. Using compost, the whole waste discussion, all that is part of it. And we can do a lot more with regards to safeguarding our food and our health. When we take care of the soil, that's what we're doing. You know, it's not just about the farm. We have to consider seriously that the health of the soil is closely linked to our health, right? It's closely linked to the quality and quantity of drinking water that we have available. We tend to take it for granted that, you know, we will always have water and we will always have, yes, it's true, right now we are a water surplus country, whereas most of our neighbors are water deficit countries. But if we don't take stock, we don't take the time to understand how that nature is functioning and what we're doing to disrupt nature from providing us with the essential services that we need, food and water, we could quickly lose this thing. There's a lot of talk about the and valid concerns being raised with regards to our mode of development in Dominica and how we choose to develop and so on. Yes, there's infrastructure that's needed, but we have to be very careful because we have one Dominica, one little piece of rock. Sometimes you get the feeling that we in this big space, you know, but it's really, really, really a small island, and we cannot afford mistakes. So some of the information is available. What I find is that for you know, we still have a lot of you know, we're still at the stage of demonstration, you know. So like a vetiver, you know, in the landscape, you'll see that as a demonstration site rather than on most farms in a hilly country like Dominica, you know. And we've been regressing in some respects because we are challenged with the natural disasters which knock down the tree crops, and we're not as quick in terms of reestablishing, both in terms of our tree crops and even our forests, where we are also challenged there as well. I'm not too sure if I strayed from your question too much, but essentially, protecting the soil, we need to add organic matter, right? We need to add organic matter. Organic matter is what the organisms in the soil feeds on, and that in itself will, you know, provide the nutrients that plants need, right? And we need to protect that soil. Cover all the time. That's very important.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. But you're making certain linkages there, you know. So I thought the first panel discussion we had was separate from this one. Well, I see we constantly going back to points that were made, especially when it comes to waste management and water management, which we spoke about. And you speaking about what we do in our agriculture impacts the quality of water that we eventually have to consume. And Andrew Magloire, you also mentioned the issue of the wastewater. And when we speak fisheries, we didn't even talk about freshwater fishing, the crayfish, and I hardly see crayfish again anyway. So we have to ask ourselves some serious questions. But so it is showing that the entire discussion is linked all along the way. And let us not divorce the first discussion from this one. But Kent, I want to come. So Dave was talking from a kind of a scientific point of view in terms of protecting the soil. And Dave, I would say maybe we regressed a bit, if you would agree with me, because now we're talking about only having demonstration vetiver strips. When we used to produce vetiver mats, we used to cultivate vetiver and make mats and baskets and all of the stuff. So it's something of having to kind of revisit. Maybe we think our parents were stupid. I don't know. But let's talk a little bit more about that same small plot of land and that small country, and a lady out in the rural area has to live off that, the economics of it, the social impact on the livelihoods of it. So we can separate it from the governance issues that may be out of their hands in terms of things, but there are local governance techniques that we may have to implement. So give us something more on that livelihood maintenance.
No problem. I think it's important that we start to define how we going to go about the small portions of land in terms of agriculture and agricultural development. We cannot continue to see things as growing a crop or raising a livestock or aquaponics or any of this sort. We have to see the farm as a business. And once we start to define the farm as a business, we now need to make that business sustainable. And I say that to say, you find people still say, I'm a dashing farmer, I'm a yam farmer, I am an avocado farmer. And you don't hear farmers saying, I have a farm enterprise that involves an assortment of commodities that are complementary. And I think we need to start speaking in the language of the farming systems. And part of that, a small farm, and I'm gonna try to bring it together from not just the small farm, but the catchment in which a small farm is operating, because no individual farm in a sustainable system can do it on its own. And I say that to say, we in Dominica, we still farm it within catchments. So I want to probably define it within the catchment, or as we really practice agriculture in Dominica. So I say that because part of the sustainability of this small farm this lady may have needs to be complemented by other farms within that catchment. So for instance, if a farmer decide to do good practices on his or her farm, and others around that farm not doing it, it will just be an effort in futility in the long run. Because if a guy has his farm above yours and is not practicing good soil management principles, eventually you're going to have land slippage, and that's going to affect you. If somebody is not practicing good practices along the river lines, you're going to have contamination of the water. It's not going to be fit for use in agriculture. So I want us to place a lot of emphasis on the whole farming system, and I want to break it up in a few bits. Our agriculture is too dependent on inputs from the outside. Our soil nutrients are mostly chemical, artificial. Our pesticides are chemical based, and most of what we bring in. And if you're going to add value to what you do, you obviously have to control some of the inputs, because you know the rising cost of inputs, because inputs are usually hinged to the fuel, and the rising cost of fuel, increasing cost of inputs. And therefore, your cost of production keep rising with the introduction and reuse of inputs from outside. So we now need to find means of producing some of these inputs on your farm. So when you start speaking of composting, you don't see it as something you're doing on the side. It is one means of reducing your cost of nutrients that you'd have gotten from the fertilizers and so on. So that is one aspect. So we're looking at some of the inputs. And that include your planting material. Even planting material, nowadays farmers go to get seedlings and so on when they could do their own seedlings. So we have to try to reduce on our cost of inputs by trying to develop systems that encourages production of those inputs. The other thing that we have to do is to really look at reduction in our waste, farm waste. And that also means the utilizing of the crops for other uses. So you may have, people may, even in the banana industry, we have things like banana fiber that can be made from the stems. In the other crops, we can generate other products. So that's something that we have to look at, where we can stretch that product in its widest use. And that also include some element of value addition, because you find farmers sell a lot of the raw material. So we now farmers need to start thinking, how can I increase my returns from expanding beyond just the fresh produce. So these are some of the immediate things you can do on the farm. But the farm can also be complemented with other opportunities, like for instance, agrotourism. Your farmers now can say, look, I have this small piece of land. I'm doing all these things. I can tie this in. So I'm trying to tie in the whole sustainable agriculture with the whole sustainability of your livelihood because they are closely tied. So I'm looking at the question you're asking as what an individual can do on your small farm to ensure sustainability. They need to do the connecting with the various aspects in terms of business opportunities on that farm. So I just wanted to touch on that. And something that is very important as part of our sustainability is the whole issue of, it's something that we don't see it as part of our farm, is the protection of the investments, whether by way of insurance and other means, but we need to protect some of the investments on those farms. So Cletus, I think I will stop here for now because I think I can continue, but
I coming back to you. I know, Dave, I know you have a point on that, but we're going to take a short break right now just to have some highlights of some Earth Hour activities that are happening. But when we come back, we want to bring the discussion more into, given these challenges, like some suggestions for some solutions that could help to arrest these things. And I know, Kent, you spoke about the agritourism part. Dave, you spoke about even the composting. Andrew, I'll be coming back to you because it's still a big C. So we're coming back to that, and then how the kind of solutions that we can have to ensure that we utilize these resources, bring in some income, some revenue, but help ensure that we have it for the next generation. Donald, are you ready? We have some footage that we want to show from, you're ready yet?
Yes. Again, interesting discussion so far, Edie and the rest of our panelists. But for the meantime, we will go to our Zoom participants. We have a group here that has been with us since the beginning in 2021, and they are back, and they're joining us. So if they're ready, JCI Dominica, let us know where you are and what you decided to do during this Earth Hour. Hello? You can introduce yourself and all the others that are there and let us know what's going on. Okay, hold on. We're trying to...
Somebody's there.
Okay, so while we are waiting for the audio of JCI Dominica, we would like to remind everybody that you can still join our Zoom. The meeting ID is 894-1425-7677, and the passcode is 675262. Okay, let's try again. JCI, can you say something? Let's see if we can hear you.
Yes, you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay,
Yeah, please
good
introduce
evening.
yourself and then tell us what you guys decided to do during this Earth Hour.
Okay, good evening again. Michael Debon here, President of JCI Dominica 2023. This year, we decided to do something different from the ordinary. Last year, we had a whole campfire by the beach. This year, we came closer to town. So we are at Reunion Park. A few of us gathered at Reunion Park, and then we cleaned Reunion Park, which is a park that we adopted. And so we just finished cleaning it. Later down, we will be planting a few flowers around Reunion Park, set up the place nice, bring it back to its glory. And I mean, we cannot end the evening without cooking food. So we're going to go and cook some food under the old time way,
Yes.
and enjoy the celebration of Earth Hour.
All right.
What you cooking?
Mr. Joseph, if I tell you, police might go and pick me up. But
Tell us
we are
what you're
cooking
cooking, my
local,
brother.
local.
You can't be
Locally cooking,
you
Mr.
can't be
Joseph.
ashamed of what you're cooking, man. We'll tell you. We'll bail you. We'll bail you.
Oh. Okay. But we are cooking local. I think everything we're going to do is local. So
And I'm
our dashing, our fig,
That's the
our,
new beef. That's the new,
And I'm
new
sure-
dish, right?
and we might have a few crayfish in it, and some local fowl and some other stuff in it.
all right.
Now I understand why you're afraid to say what you cook.
And I'm sure you guys are using sustainable materials tonight. So thank
We're using wood to cook that way. Wood, and you are Mr. Joseph from Vickers, so you should know the old time black pot.
Yeah, man.
Good. So we're going to be
Shots
cooking in
here.
an old time black pot and use wood.
You didn't
All
cut
right.
a tree. You harvested a fallen tree, right?
Repeat that.
You harvested a fallen tree. You didn't just cut a tree to cook the food.
That tree fell already.
oh.
It was not. It was, it was not our doing that caught it. We met it on the B-side. So
All
we're
right.
using
Since
it.
Maria. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
So thank you very much, JCI Dominica. You know, this group, ED, they have been with us since 2021. So every year they are there. So thank you very much for your Earth Hour moment. Don't forget, post your Earth Hour moments, and then on your social media pages, and add the hashtags Earth Hour Dominica, Biggest Hour for Earth, and My Hour for Earth. So anybody else in the Zoom who would like to share what they decided to do during Earth Hour? Anybody? Anyone else? Of course, Edie, we are already seeing some photos and videos on social media, and we have a very, very what you call that, huge, not huge, but important video to try to show later, because for the first time in our 3-year observation, I think we finally have a real landmark, you know, here in Dominica that went dark, so to speak, which lights were turned off. So I think the video is now on its way. So hopefully we would be able to show that to all of you. So I guess there's nobody yet in the Zoom who like. So maybe later we'll just come back
Certainly.
to them. So
All
back
right,
to you, Edie, and
thank you.
our esteemed panelists.
Yeah, thank you. I'm seeing some very interesting names on the Zoom connection. So thank you guys, everyone, for that. You're special people, and some of you are extra special. I won't call names. I'm not going to call names, Donald. Yeah. So yeah, some very special people are on. So thank you for joining us. I can see the Zoom. As for the Facebook page, thank you for joining us, guys. Those on Emo News, those on DNO, welcome. Thanks for joining us, and our Facebook page as well. But we're going to come back to the issue of sustainable agriculture and how. But they've, in terms of the issue of getting that small plot of land and making it work, I think you can use an example from what you do on, like, Second Nature. You just do it because it's part of you, you know it's the right thing to do, and it's enhancing, and then give some pointers as to how we can really transform that thing that is not just a figment of our imagination, or we just do it because just for doing its sake, but it can really pay dividends to us in the end and be sustainable financially, sustainable environmentally, and sustainable socially. So give us some pointers. Then I'll come to you, Andrew, in terms of still to talk about that big C we have, and how we can use it sustainably.
Okay. The farmer, makes decisions every day. He decides what to plant. He decides, and I can recall my mom was also into farming, but somehow she had a good understanding of the market, when things are needed and so on, and she have them in time, so she makes sure there's avocados before independence when there's a high demand, and and that sort of thing. So the farmers make their decisions. We may, as a scientist, I might find some of them, not making scientific sense, you know, but they have that understanding of the environment. So whereas I might sit here and say we should do X, Y, and Z and so on, they are, I myself make decisions on my farm, as to what I do. A lot of times, people, farmers would make a decision to plant something based on the expectation that they can sell. There's a market, and so that's why I said there's multiple legs on which sustainability has to stand. So whereas it might make sense to plant your have an integrated system and plant a number of things, that could work. It make ecological sense, right? One feeds into the other and so on. And you have a good system in terms of the soil management. But then that additional work you put into that, and then you can't sell it, So I say that to say that it's not just a farmer, issue. It's a broad issue, right? And we have to continuously look at it from the multiple legs and multiple approaches. But that said, though, there are opportunities with regards to processing. I think Kent mentioned it earlier, adding value. We need to also look for what, in terms of crop selection, choosing what is compatible with our environment. Dominica, yeah, you might see the soil, it's soil everywhere, but we have different soil types. We have different rainfall patterns. There are differences, right? And we have to understand what works best within, our system. And in the Dominica context, we need to decide what we want as a country, because there's a number of things we can do and we could do well, but we need to consider the entire value chain, right? From the market to the, right to the production end. And if we can develop a brand that is less reliant on external inputs, we can become more sustainable, I believe. We can become more resilient. We also have to consider our the genetic side of things. Okay, we have, for instance, cocoa. We have cocoa that it's the best anywhere in the world. But today we are importing cocoa from Grenada because we don't have enough. I mean, Hurricane Maria was in 2017, man. Come on. Cocoa, you get full bearing cocoa. If you graft it, you can get it in 18 months, you can have cocoa bearing. By 5 years, definitely you're swinging. I see no excuse for these things. So these are the avenues. We have good the genetic resource is there, and I'm not telling you that we've done as part of a group I've been in. We took 60 samples we collected all over the country, had them analyzed, DNA fingerprinting, and we have the data on it. excellent quality, top quality cocoa anywhere in the world. Right here. And the thing about it is that it's unique. Out of the 6,000 samples that are in the gene bank in Trinidad, right? The UE Cocoa Resource Center. It's unmatched. You cannot find them in there, so it's only here. So here's a selling point that you could develop cocoa products around, that unique. You can apply for now for what they call geographic indicator. So same way that in France, Bordeaux wine can only come from Bordeaux. So that particular chocolate could only come from Dominica. Here it is that you have your competitive advantage and you can really make money. We have not brought in cannabis into the equation, but that is an excellent crop to be integrated into your system in terms of cover, right? Quick growing and so on, and all the other uses. And we have another issue with genetic material again, where our local strain, right? The local Dominican strain, which has an excellent balance of CBD and THC, right? That is, among the best I understood in terms of the medical cannabis side of things. We basically lost that. Okay? So that genetic line, maybe it can be, somehow with what's left, we can preserve it. We have another issue similarly with a pepper that we had there, local pepper, Boramajac. When last you saw Boramajac?
I don't remember what it looks like.
Okay, exactly. I don't think younger people might just hear the name. Okay, but that was something, a local strain that we had. We've lost. The Trinidad has its Moruga Red, all over the world, international, Scotch Bonnet, linked to Jamaica and so on. Our Boramajac should be there. That is the difference.
Thank you, Dave. You bringing up stuff that should be food for thought for us in terms of governance and sustainability. But Andrew, we can't leave the Boramajac and the Liquor Vivano out. You used to give it a good flavor. So it's a big C, and then you mentioned the issue of we can be an endangerment to that resource, to that renewable resource that we have out there. How is it that we can utilize those? And if you can also focus a little bit more on some, less attractive species of fish that we catch. I remember as a little boy growing in Vickers, passing in certain areas, and there used to smell at certain times because the excess fish we caught, the fishers would dump it. We may not have it at that scale now, but give us your insight on that and some potential solutions to what we seem to be wanting to change our blessings into curses. We need to reverse that.
Okay, I think if we just take a historical look at Dominica in terms of fisheries, traditionally we utilize a lot of the coastal resources, that is fish that were close to shore, because we use vessels that were not able to navigate and far reaching of the oceans. So we targeted mostly the coastal resources. So we saw a lot of beach-seine fishery that landed things like jacks, uleo, and we also exploited a lot of our coastal reef species. But because of the practices that we used over the years, we saw diminishing numbers, and we recognized things like tash started to decline, things like our flying fish slowly began to disappear from the dinner tables and so on. And those factors come or stem from a combination of environmental degradation protocols as well as poor fishing practices and habits associated with the fishing operations. And so in more modern time, what we sought to do was to allow the coastal resources to have a lesser impact on fishing pressure and transfer that fishing pressure from the coastal to the offshore. So we saw now, as a result of that, our fishery became more predominantly dominated by species such as large tunas, marlin, and those sort of species, which were migratory species in respect of that. Now, that has certain unique aspects to it in terms of how we utilize the resource and how we develop our business habits with respect to those resources. Because the further we go, the more costly it becomes to get those resources. And so we developed mechanisms in our own context using materials that are available locally to reduce the cost. And so the fat fish really was developed as a result of that. And it brought a lot of benefit to a number of persons. Also during those times, we had the declining impact on the banana industry. And so the fisheries sector became a cushioning point for many persons to earn a livelihood by going out to tap on those resources. So currently, we have to go back to look at what are the things that we can do to ensure sustainability in our fishery resource. And a lot of that has to do with our practices. And one of the first practices that we need to consider, in my view, is what we call import substitution. There are a lot of things that we have in Dominica that we use for food that can be substituted by our own local resource. Smoked herring, salt, cod fish, a lot of the tin fish and so forth. We can utilize our own local resources, all right, and reduce our import bill and create greater opportunities for persons locally in terms of livelihoods. Also, it is more beneficial to us in terms of health, because the foods that we will take locally from our local fish are much healthier in terms of the human body. So it reduces our incidence of disease, contraction, and so on. So in essence, it's a better appeal for us in relation to that.
Right, thank you. So, but I see a theme though, from we risk, if we are not careful, losing certain species of not just fish, as you mentioned, like the tash and other sort of kind of delicate fish, but also in terms of plants and unique plants like cocoa, maybe coffee too, the Arabica and Robusta.
Can I ask you a question? When last you saw a thriving VO operation in your rivers?
When
You
I
know
s-
what
when
VO
I
is?
s- when I say go in a river.
You remember what VO is? We used to have a lot of VO. Book. Huh? Where are they? Why aren't we asking
So-
the questions, where are these species disappearing to? Why are they not part of our traditional diet? And so we need to reflect back on one of the first things I said in relation to the introduction of this thing is that fish as a source of food and as a source of a resource, a sustainable resource, is highly dependent on environmental health. Okay, so agriculture has contributed to the significant decline of book and VO and those sort of things, and therefore education becomes of paramount importance to the sustainability of fisheries, to the sustainability of agriculture, and we must not divorce agriculture from a sector component, but it must be intertwined so that fisheries dependency on good quality water from the land into our river streams, okay, will sustain the species that are critical to us. Some of us now know what we call TTV, okay, but how many of the rivers are we are still obtaining TTV from today? They're very few. They're declining. Why are they declining? So unless we begin to associate those linkages, we are not going to be able to achieve sustainable fisheries, sustainable livelihoods.
Yes, Dave.
I share that that view and that point. We have some serious challenges. So even with the whole sustainability and things that we could do, because we have very few examples of them and actually data, right? I think from the standpoint of the policymakers, they are not convinced, maybe, right, that the contribution that that direction could make to our overall economy. I think by now we would probably see a CBI agriculture project. I haven't heard one. All I'm hearing is infrastructure. But if these things are really important for our development, as I think they are, we need to invest in them, accordingly. So certainly there's a lot more that we can do, and the question of education is very, very important. I try not to say no to opportunities where we can engage. I hope there's many people listening, or it will reach them. But although we focus a lot of the question on the small farm, I think we need to have more of a landscape view of things. That's when the connectivity will come. Because if we consider things on, at least on the watershed scale, sometimes we talk about watershed and we're thinking of just the water catchment where the water is harvested. But the watershed is that entire area that receives water going down to the sea, and it's linking with the marine environment. And the understanding of management from ridge to reef is something that we have to get into our psyche at different levels. So when we're planning, when we're doing things, we have to understand how those, whatever we do is going to impact on that scale. Sometimes it's difficult to anticipate or understand the downstream connection. But I've been seeing it. I've been doing a lot of work in watersheds, sampling, doing water samples, looking for, in terms of biodiversity assessment, both in terms of the land and the aquatic environment. And we have serious issues. We have serious issues with our water quality, our water quantity, our stream banks with regards to, our riparian areas, the whole structure of the forest is what a forest is supposed to look like, the types of species and so on. And as I'm on that, there's some, communities like the Kalilango community, which has, I think, the greatest connection with the natural environment in terms of the land. And, for the craft and livelihoods and so on. And, we might hear about the Lauma, but there's other things, the Mibi, the other things that they use that are in decline.
Yeah, I think we can talk for the rest of the week on those things, Dave. But interestingly, we had a young Kalinago lady working with us, and she brought us some baskets manufactured in the thing. And the colors on the basket are all natural. I thought it was some coloring they were imported. And then she was saying that the black is made from soil, and the yellow is made from some particular leaf, and the green is made from some other plant. And these are all natural things. But we have to, I like the discussion because it is being instructive to us in terms of an approach that we can have. But we have to conclude. So if we take like 2 minutes each, and I'll start with Kent.
Thank you. I missed the opportunity, so I'm going to use the last 2 minutes just to indicate some of the efforts that the institution has been contributing to the discussion. As a matter of fact, when you mention Reach to Reef, we actually have an ongoing project funded by the CBF, the Caribbean Biodiversity Funds, and it's an eco-based adaptation project where we really looking at nature-based solutions. You're looking at the green solutions to addressing some of those upland activities or on upland vulnerabilities that can contribute to some of the things that we mentioned here. And we also wanted to promote the green business as part of the effort. And last year in Pilit Soufriere, we actually saw some of the things that we were trying to address with the use of Vective as a means to protect the landscape or to reduce on land slippage. So what we while we speak in those things, I agree that what we need to do is to have some more of those initiatives or those kind of installations being done in other communities so we can protect not only the farmer but the fishers, because whatever activities happen upland will certainly affect those downstream. I just really want to use the last 30 seconds just to indicate that it's an ongoing effort. We have a number of projects where we're trying to support reducing some of those vulnerabilities, and it's a harsh reality because farmers are not going to spend their money putting in drains and putting in contours, and they're not going to be making a profit. So we have to really have a balance, and we really have to support some of those natural resource protection and management. And we need to really continue the effort to promote some of those regenerative approaches to really protect some of the resources that are really not so available to most of our farmers. So I think it would be nice that when looking at the small business effort, that's why I really congratulate the NDFD, where people have to look at the green solutions as an important aspect of their business or to support their business. I think it's something that we have to really pay attention to. There are business opportunities. As I indicated, on a farm, people can now do their tea manures, their own pesticidal mix using various herbs. You know, some people may use gloricida, some people may use neem, some people may use garlic. You can have different options on your farm. You don't have to necessarily depend on those from the commercial end. So these are some of the things that we want to promote, and I continue to just work with the farmers. We have to work with them. We have to hold their hands. We have to guide them, and we just have to remind them of the things that we used to do in the past and do it in a sustainable way. So thanks again, and we continue the discussion.
Yeah, Dave?
Okay, just to round up, I think any drive to enhance the sustainability of our agriculture needs to have a posture that defends the farmer, put him or her, you know, as central, and consider seriously the socio-economic aspects equally as the environmental. And we cannot do this piecemeal. We need to have, it needs to be linked into the national plan and direction for the country to take us forward. There are opportunities because I think the whole effort is to link to opportunities for businesses, green businesses, and so on. I think in the area of management of our natural resources, getting measurements. Even now we implement something, we need to be able to check to see, boy, how is that helping? How I'm remembering the proper name or the VO. How link that to the VO population. So if we don't know the VO population now in that river that we're targeting, how can we know whether it's improving or getting worse, even if we're doing something about it higher up? We need to be measuring. So on that scale, we need people trained in that whole issue of measurement, right? We need people, spatial analysts, the GIS experts, and so on. These are people that we need. So these are opportunities, services that will support. Dominica is signatory to a number of multilateral agreements. Some of them requiring us to make improvements with regards to land to addressing land degradation and so on. That you can measure and with spatial data analysis. So we need people trained and providing those services. Farmers themselves, the same way they go to buy fertilizers, they can probably buy tea manure or compost from, but it's not. It serves as an opportunity. The integration of livestock with crops, is another key thing. Small ruminants that we don't have to import feed for them. We can, all the copy we have growing all over the place. Somehow we need to have that as an industry. So when we have the livestock industry, the waste from the livestock industry will support our crop industry. And when we have that loop, the waste from the fish can also, be good. So, yeah, it's a lengthy discussion, but I'm happy to have been part of it, and I thank you and the audience, very much. Thanks.
Okay, just to wrap up from the fisheries sector aspects, I think we need a lot more consultation among the various players so that we begin to understand what are the challenges that they face. We also need to look at our national interests in terms of what we eat, what we grow, and what we produce. I'm a big advocate of import substitution. That is to say, if we look at our food import bill, how much of that food import bill can be substituted by our local resource? And it's tremendous. And we have to challenge our young people coming up today, okay, to be innovative in terms of business ventures surrounding the local resource. Okay, TTV can do a lot for us in terms of enhancing our food, nutritional aspects, but also creating business opportunities for people within that aspect. Fisheries, again, we can begin to look at compartmentalizing the fishery industry a little bit more to generate greater business opportunities, and again, creating foreign exchange earnings, not from export, but from the things that we are not going to import, and having foreign exchange loss from those aspects. So I think there's a lot that we need to begin to discuss along those lines, and I'm happy that NDF to take on this activity tonight, and we'll continue it, because we need more advocacy, we need more discussion, we need more dialogue on how we utilize the resources sustainably to achieve the goals that we want to have for resilience in the future.
Thank you, gentlemen. But I get some kind of underlying themes, and one of the key themes is the linkage and the connectivity between these sectors and across the board, that on a small island like Dominica, in a big sea like the Caribbean and the Atlantic Ocean, we have to be careful as to how we manage those resources that we have. While we say, yes, fisheries is a renewable resource, but we have non-renewable ones that interact with it, and we have to be careful as to how we do that. And there are certainly opportunities that come up with that, and as you said, to help with things like the import substitution, and we reduce this sort of, I think there's a exportation of money, exportation of funds that we really are into right now in terms of every way. Even money itself we exporting now. So we have to look at that and see how we can arrest that situation and think. But critically, I underscore the point, I want to underscore the point that we are at risk at losing some critical species that can make significant differences in terms of creating opportunities for younger persons. The weed should not just be to smoke, but rather be used for production and medical purposes rather than just smoking and getting high is a thing. Issues of cocoa production, chocolate production, that can be so connected. The raw materials can be reused in agriculture. The raw materials, the waste material from fisheries can be reused in terms of agriculture production, in terms of converting some of those what we call weeds into feed for our livestock. I was speaking with a farmer friend the other day, and he used to do pigs, and he told me, boy, he just finished that because when he gone buy a bag of feed, it was like $75 from $40. So how many bags of feed I can buy now and still sell a pound of pig meat at what I used to before, you know? So these are the decisions, again, Dave, as you mentioned, that the farmers make on a day-to-day basis. And then whenever we speak to them, we need to come up with those types of solutions to them in terms of how they can use what we are saying to make a difference and generate economic returns to them in terms of that. But Dave, I maybe might come back to you, but the issue of data collection, and Andrew, you spoke about it too, and Kent, all three of you. If we do not know what we have, how do we know what sort of impact we are having on these resources? And we definitely have an issue here in terms of our research and development, our data collection, our setting of baselines, establishing these baselines so that we can down the road really determine whether we are being sustainable in our utilization of these resources. Cost reducing initiatives in terms of the use of energy efficient and renewable energy resources. I know, Andrew, we did not have the chance to get into how we reduce the cost of our fisheries operations by using more modern technologies, more biodegradable material like nets, like four-stroke engines rather than two strokes, those types of technologies. Kent, we hope that we can see our vetiver demonstrations become more like established vetiver farms sooner rather than later, you know, and especially as you engage in that sustainable land management initiative from ICA perspective. And let me say that we are partnering on that part of it where we help rural women in agriculture and agro-processing to develop that thing. So, gentlemen, it's been like just touching the tip of, I don't want to say iceberg, we don't have that here, but just starting to reach the base of the mountain that we really have to climb. And we certainly will be engaging you again. And if you have, we maybe want to use you as maybe mentors and advisors for some of our entrepreneurs who will be part of the Green Innovation Summit, where we help them to develop those business ideas along more sustainable lines, but not just sustainable for environmental purposes, but for the purpose of being financially sustainable and being sustainable in a manner that makes sense to them, and they can see the benefits of having it make financial sense, as well as having the positive impacts on our health. Because who would say that our activities in terms of what we do on our farms, even in other greater areas, impact the quality of life that we live? So I want to thank you very much for that. Donald, you have a video for us to share. Have you gotten that yet? Yeah, 2 more minutes. So, gentlemen, if you want, you can indulge us again with by just maybe anything that you think that we left out you want to touch on. If I don't impinge on your time too much. You know, when you see you have resources like this up here, it's not frequent that you get them as so readily available. Yeah.
Just to add, though, even in terms of we're talking about sustainability, but what we're seeing with climate change, we're also seeing changes in terms of the ecological structures of our resources. We see now, we never saw before, blooms of algae, sargassum seaweed floating into our zones and creating all kinds of destabilizing structures. But at the end of the day, what are the benefits that we can harness out of that resource? And it is a resource. It's a resource that is going to stay in here with us because of the climate change. So we have to begin to be more innovative. We have to take what we consider to be challenges and turn them into opportunities. You know, I see sargassum being a major contributor to addressing some of the soil deficiency factors because of the nutrient content that associated with it. And if we can use it and compost it and do those sort of things with it, we could generate some significant inroads in terms of benefits along the lines. So as I said, we need to challenge ourselves as a people. We need to stop looking at the externalities of things as the better things for us. And whereas we have resources inland at a far more superior to us than the things that we are importing and using foreign exchange upon.
Yeah. One thing, Cletus, that we probably did not touch in a very serious way is the need for research and development and our alignment with agencies that can provide because there are universities, agencies that are willing to come in and do those deep studies to do the kind of because we need to transform the sector. We need to transform our approaches. Things are not going to be things are not the same. The environment, whilst the environment might be similar, looking at it hasn't been changing. It is actually changing, and I think we need to really tie in the aspect of research and research as part of our development, as part of our sustainability. So I think that is something that we didn't talk much on, but I think we touched a little bit on it, but not in depth. But I think that's an important aspect. The issue of genetics, we didn't speak much about that, and I mean Dave mentioned it earlier. But how we could use those things because we can't it can't be business as usual. We have to marry the science with what we're accustomed of doing, but more so to guide us as to what direction we have to go. Because it's all about building efficiency, it's all about transformation, it's all about regenerative approaches, but it cannot just be, it's not going to take care of its own. So we have to really employ that sort of approach. Thanks.
Directly, but we touched on it as we could. There's an opportunity there, and not only for universities to come, but we have students who live here to go to study, but somehow we don't connect. And I went through the same thing. We don't connect our students with the problems that we have. So there's probably a listing of priority areas that students link, but it should go deeper than that. That we get our students in touch with real problems, so that when they go to do their master's project, their PhD studies, and so on, it's really linked to situations here that they themselves can come back and work on in the future. We provide for them, but we let that opportunity go out all the time, and you will get the benefit of top researchers or supervisors for their projects wherever they are in the world. So Dominica would benefit from that. It's an opportunity we keep letting slip away.
I want to ask you one question. Andrew mentioned it, the issue of the saga. Have you seen any studies or any works done with regard to? I've heard talk that you can use it to compost, but any scientific studies as to the benefits of that and how we can utilize that? Because it's a shame when you cannot go to the beach and it's wasting. So it's a waste. One, you can't use the beach because too much of that there. Two, it stinks in the place and it becomes a hazard essentially to dispose of. But have you seen any research done on that in terms of the benefits of it and how we can convert it into maybe compost reasonably or even something else?
Well, yeah, certainly there's a lot of studies and work going on. I think now a lot of attention is being placed on it because the blooms are getting bigger and bigger. I think the one forecasted for this season is even bigger than the last. So yes, there's even groups making building materials from this. Specific to agriculture, there are some issues, some setback, some concerns, because it also has it's known to have a lot of heavy metals, things like cadmium and some of the others, which would get into the food chain and have serious health risks associated with them. So it's something we have to explore, particularly since we have, as Andrew said, we have so much of it, and it has nutrients that plants would use as well, but there's also the other downside. So if we find ways that we could, the same way that we remove the salt from it before we apply it to the plants, then we could remove some of those heavy metals and make it, you know, yeah, more user friendly.
Dave, what I would drive to say about sargassum is that it's new to our region, like over the past 11 years, but sargassum in the Asian countries have been a mainstay and part of the life of these people, and there are huge benefits in the utilization of sargassum, both in terms of health and wellness, food. It's used as a food resource. It's used for agricultural purposes. So there are huge benefits. And there are lots of research available on the various uses and things of sargassum. It's just new to us in our region because of the climate change issues and so forth. But it's something that we can transform into into valuable aspects of our life, rather than look at the downsides of it from a tourism aspect only.
Yes, thank you. Donald, are you there? You downloading? But gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for the insights that you've brought on. And as we said, it's just touching the base of the hill, and we have that big mountain to climb. But with our combined efforts, we can rest assured that if we really put our shoulders to the wheel, or we put wheels on our bicycles, we can climb that mountain. So thank you very much for bringing your knowledge and experience to bear. We do have some little tokens for you, as well as there's some little snack available. So it is. Thanks, Dave. So you ready, right? You still do.
All right. So once again, thank you, Mr. Joseph. Yeah. Okay. So once again, we would like to thank everybody who tuned in. We are still trying to get the video of that landmark. Yes. All right. So the landmark that we have been talking about is actually the State House. So we would like to, of course, thank and acknowledge His Excellency Charles Savre for for allowing us to have the State House go dark, so to speak, during Earth Hour. So finally, we have, in our view, a real Dominican landmark. So we'd like to thank him and the rest of the Office of the President. Especially, we have Ms. Blackmore, the Secretary, for, of course, all the assistants. And also, he also made a video message in line with Earth Hour, so we would like to thank him. And we had this big share from Earth Hour International itself, the global page of Earth Hour, with 1 million members. So talking about Dominica to the world. And in fact, right now, we're actually being viewed around the world, because I shared this linked to our group in the global team. Now, before we move on, we, of course, would like to acknowledge the other influencers who sent their video message to us. We had, of course, Miss Janelle Brisbane, our very highly respected wildlife ecologist and conservationist. And of course, we also have Derek Ra, who also sent his video in support of Earth Hour. We also have Marcia Baptiste. Of course, she is a Dominican beauty queen. And of course, 767 basketball team, or All-Stars basketball team, will be representing Dominica in July in a regional tournament. So thank you very much. So once again, thank you to all who tune in, everybody on the live, on all the other online site, MO News, of course, DNO, those who are in the Zoom, thank you very much, and everybody. So I think we are ready with the video. We would like to big up, of course, Quick Links for helping us here, and of course for the person who took the footage and edited it very quickly. We have Mr. Jordan Jerome, JK Productions, and with the assistance of Mr. Charles Louis of Charles Louis Photography. So thank you very much, and happy Earth Hour again. So here is our special video to end this wonderful live that we had tonight.